And where did you grow up specifically?
Okay, so name's Kaldric Dows. You guys probably seen it on the front of the door. I'm an artist. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I spent about the first 17 years of my life there, so I'm kind of Houston to the core, but I spent the other 17 years here kind of developing as an artist. So after moving here, I spent my last 2 years of high school at John Jay High School, and there I was kind of introduced to the arts more. I had always been like drawing and painting in Houston, in art classes and deals like that. And, I moved here and I kind of got a culture shock with like just the Hispanic culture. I went to Fiesta the first time when I moved here and it was like culture shock. People doing gritos and, the paper pascal, I think they call it, the colorful paper, and people dancing. So it was really like a culture shock when I got here. But ever since then, I've just been like creating work.
All right. So you may have addressed some of this in your first response. So at what specific age and life experience turned you on to the realization that you desire to be an artist?
Okay, so in fourth grade, I think was like a breakthrough moment for me. In Houston, we went to this museum, contemporary art museum, and I've never been like exposed to art. Like the neighborhood I grew up in, there was no artists. No one was artists, everyone was just working day jobs. And so I was never exposed to art at all. So when we went to the museum, there was, sculptures and, different arts. And then once we were exiting, there was this huge painting of like this African-American man. I mean, huge, like 4 or 5 times the size that I was. So I seen him, he had like this hat on, his open button shirt, and his chest hair sticking out. And I was like, it impacted me so much as a 4th grader that I had to figure out what that was. Like, what is this, right? Because it's not a person, but it reminds me of someone, either my uncles, my cousins, my brothers. And so that was the moment that I kind of wanted to figure out what art was, right? But I started to draw, which is when you ask people about art, they're like, hey, as a 4th grader, you're like, hey, I want to do this. They're like, well, here's a pencil, here's the paper. Draw. And so when you first start, you're drawing what you like. Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, anime, different deals like that. So I'm drawing Marvel. So as I go through middle school and high school, this is kind of what I'm drawing, kind of building my skills up as I go. And so I kind of just cultivated this art feeling, just drawing. And then when I got to Jay, the art teacher had seen my talent, right? She had seen that, oh, this guy has skills. So let me give him materials. Let me give him canvas and paint and all of these things, oil pastels. And so we had an art competition at Jay, which is the school I got once I got here. And for the competition, I wanted to go all out, right? So I took a picture of my mom with my 2 sisters, which are twins. I have twin sisters, and then I have a twin brother. So there was a picture of us 5 there in front of our apartment complex, and I kind of collaged this whole, took pieces from magazines and cardboard paper, whatever was around the house, and I made it. And in art classes, when the bell rung, all of the students would leave, and I'm like, I gotta get this little finger right, how do I get this finger right? Everybody's gone. So kind of the teacher seen that perseverance in me and was like, we're gonna put you in a competition. So that went to the competition and it won like the highest award. So from that point, I was like, I can do something with this. I don't know what I can do, but I can do something with this artwork, right? So that kind of got me on the track, but then I ended up going to UTSA for engineering because when you tell somebody you're going to be an artist, people are like, there's no one making art out here. Like there's no one who's successful making art, right? You should go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, go be an engineer. So I went to school to UTSA for engineering. When I got there, first class, there was an equation as long as the board. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this. This isn't for me, right? So I switched to making art. I went to art classes instead of the engineering. And, I loved it. We sat and drew for 3-4 hours, we had a ceramics class where I'm building clay and all of these other things. And I just excelled at that in college. So kind of developing my skills, still not knowing how to make it from art, because there's still a heavy stigma around making art and being successful, because that's why you're going to college, right? Is figure out what you want to do. So, the whole time I'm loving making art, but I don't know what I would do as an adult, right? So I kind of switched into doing graphic design. So I went into a smaller school for graphic design where, graphic design is you can work for a business. Every business kind of needs a graphic designer, which made sense to me logically. And so when I graduated, I started doing graphic design for 4 or 5 years. But then when I got off of my graphic design job, I'll go home and do the traditional painting, which is how I developed more into different series,
Okay. Well, unlike you waiting for college to find out what I wanted to do, I actually knew before I went to college what I wanted to do.
Yes.
But anyway, I digress. You sort of spoke to some of the things I'm wanting to know in my next question, talking about art transformation. How many years have you been a serious artist now?
When you say serious, you mean getting paid? Like a serious, like you're making money from this, or is serious like, because I was serious in 4th grade. Right? I was trying to figure it out, So I say with serious, we'll go with getting paid for it, because that's when I was really trying to hey, I'm out of college, I got to figure it out. So since 2016 is when I had my first exhibition, and the first time that I was trying to figure out what my style was. Mm-hmm. So 2016.
Okay, so we'll give you 10 to 15. Not a sentence, but 10 to 15 in your serious art field. So with that said, what kind of transformation have you seen in how you go about creating art, what you focus on, subject matters, all of that, and who have been some of the people you've been most influenced by in your art style and your art transformation?
So subject matter is, for me, portraits, like I said in the beginning, 4th grade was this huge portrait, right? So that I feel like portraits for me has the strongest impact of impacting people, because when you see a portrait and it looks like you or it reminds you of someone, I feel like it impacts you much more. So portraiture has always been my vein of work. But in the beginning, when I was doing my first series, which was the Black on Black series, when I started taking the work serious, right? When I wasn't doing Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, all of that stuff. Because there was a period before I got serious. There was a period where I was doing pop figures, so Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Jay-Z, all of these pop culture figures. And for me, when I was looking at other artists, that's not what they were doing, right? That's kind of replicating what is already out in the world. So I got serious when I started making the Black on Black series, which, if you look in the corner, that was a Black on Black, and that was the first series. I started to notice the artists that I like Kehinde Wiley, Mickalene Thomas. These guys were painting in series, right? So the series is a similar body of work that looks the same but it's different. And I started to learn that's how I needed to make work. So the Black on Black series, I started to take photos of that's me and my sister, right? And I started to set up lighting. I started to set up the camera in a certain way to get a certain look and a certain appeal. So I started to make a bunch of those. I started to do my mom, my sisters, my brother, and his partner, and I started to just make a series of these Black on Black. And Black on Black essentially means Black people on black canvas. Very simple. I wasn't complicated in the naming of the series. And so, I did it. And then that 2016 was the first year me and Barbara was in the same exhibition for Luminaria. And so the project that I wanted to do was to invite people from the East Side, because Luminaria was on the East Side that year, and that's a night art festival. So my proposal was that I invite people to my studio. which was my bedroom at that point in the house. And I invited people there, and I took photos of them, and invited their children, invited them, their sisters, cousins. So it was like a whole series of just people with braids, like I like their look, right? And so that was a whole black on black series I did just for that festival, but then I carried it over into just doing it for me. So that was the first series that I did, was the black on black. And then, after a while of doing the same thing that works, I wanted to switch to something that was more of a challenge, like fabric was my next series. So I wanted to take fabric and stretch it over canvas and paint portraits on top of it, which is the next series, the fabric series I worked on. And I did that for about 2-3 years. And then I started to see somebody like painting on rugs, and I was like, this is too similar to my work. So I stopped doing it, which I realize now that wasn't the right way to go about it, but I stopped doing that fabric work, and then I jumped into collage, which is the current series that you guys kind of see around us.
Absolutely. So when I take a look at your beautiful artwork that is on display here today, I do see the Kehinde Wallace influence, but I also see Berkeley Hendricks and even one more local, Miss Deborah Roberts from Austin. Can you speak to how they may have influenced your technique or your style? Or
Yeah. So Kehinde Wiley, I don't know who's familiar with his artwork. He's makes these huge portraits very similar to Berkeley Hendricks, who I was influenced by as a 4th grader. When I seen that piece, I figured out later in my life that was a Berkeley Hendricks piece that I was influenced by. And so Kehinde Wiley he did the Obama portrait in like 2008 with the pattern in the background and the painted portrait. So I was influenced by him because his work was just so different, but it also showed people who look like me on such a huge scale, as far as the size of the piece. And as far as like showing in galleries and museums, which is all the places I wanted to be. So the fabric series was almost a direct derivative of his patterns that he used in his background. So me painting on top of that was like an homage to him in a way. And then the collage series, I was just bored with fabric. And I remember the piece that I did in high school that won the award, that was made of collage. I wanted to kind of go back to that. So I didn't find out about Deborah Roberts until after I started the collage work. But she has amazing work. And a lot of times artists like that on that scale, I do a lot of I'll go on their Wikipedias and I see where they grew up and the schools they went to, and I'm kind of studying them. I look at the news that's wrote about them and kind of want the same thing for myself, kind of those ambitions. But I remember when I first started art, I was I kind of did this ego thing, and I went and I searched my name, and it was like one page, right? It was like one page, just half a page. And then there was this other guy when I typed in my name, and it's like, did you mean King Kaldric, which was like a WB show? And I'm like, no, Kaldric Dows. And so I was like, man, I gotta make sure that my Wikipedia page is like Kehinde Wiley, where he has 8, 9, 10 pages. So as I'm making art, I'm consciously how do I make these Google pages longer? So I need to do I need to get articles, I need to get some interviews. So now I'm actively making art, thinking about doing those things, right? They were influences in that way.
Okay. Kehinde was on exhibition in Houston, where you spent a lot of your youthful time.
Yeah.
Did you by chance get to see his exhibition there at the Museum of Art?
Yeah, it was inspirational. It was, not only did he do the huge paintings, but he also did sculpture. Mm-hmm. So he went into sculpture as well, which, it's kind of cool when you're making art. You're making a one type of art, which is 2D art. To jump into something totally different from that is a huge challenge, and it takes a lot of mind space away from what you're doing already. So that's a big leap of faith that you're taking as an artist, so that's why it's inspirational.
Absolutely. So do you have a personal relationship with all the people in your portrait work, or are they random people that you just found in magazines?
Yeah, so in the beginning, the Black on Black series was very focused on who I know.
Mm-hmm.
The second series, Fabric, and this current series is pretty much people that I'm finding either they're being photographed by certain photographers or they're stock images on Google. So whichever ones kind of like resonate with me and I know that someone else is gonna see it and resonate with it, I'll just choose that photo and paint it.
Okay. So of the collection that we are seeing here in this space, what is the oldest piece on exhibit?
Oldest piece is probably that Black on Black, that's all the way at the end. That one was done in 2016, and that was me and my sister. Yeah, that's the oldest one. Everything else is, I mean, you can tell by the style that is so different from the rest of the work. So that's how you can see that gap between, you know, the years.
Mm-hmm. And that's the second part of that question. So how has your technique or approach to creating art now changed since that first piece?
I mean, it's a series, right? So it's kind of like, if you guys were to see all of the Black on Black series, like it'll fill up this room. But they went to different homes, which I'm not complaining about. It's great, right? It's great that people have gotten and it went to different homes. But, you know, there was one point where the Black on Black series, I kind of valued it less than my newer works because, you know, it's kind of old and your new works, you're like, man, this is the new stuff. But I talked to a friend recently and they were like, your old works, you should be valuing that more because that's kind of where you started. You know, it's like seeing a Picasso, his new work versus his old work. Like his old work is extremely technical and skilled, and then his new work is like, it's almost like he stopped trying, but not really. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you know, they gave me a perspective on how to think about my older work, so I kind of have a better relationship with my older works, you know, now that they're all gone. I think I only have this one and like one more from the Black on Black series. But, did that answer the question?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, I didn't really develop a true, very strong appreciation for art up until probably 15 years ago. I was the guy who, whatever painting was on the wall above my sofa had to be in the color scheme of my sofa.
Yeah.
That's the kind of art that I purchased or gravitated to. So with that said, how do you choose the fabric and paper colors, graphics, and textures for an art piece?
That's a good question. So a lot of times I'll get asked this question sometimes. So with the collage pieces, you guys can kind of see that there's a bunch of different collage pieces that's in there, and I'm primarily basing it off that person's skin tone. So whether they're light skinned like her, I'm going through and picking out all of these light pieces that can possibly be, that can possibly resemble the tone that I'm looking for. So you can tell like she's light skinned, right? And then the one next to it, he was more darker. So I'm going through this collage book that I have multiple collage books, and I'm picking out which skin tone pieces is closer to his brown, darker skin, right? So, and then the hair, of course, is black, so I'm going through and I'm picking out black patterns that kind of go with hair. Maybe it's curly. So it's specifically based off of the color that I'm looking for. Now, sometimes I do find interesting pieces, coincidentally. Like, there's like the angel on his temple. Like, that piece I found and I'm like, it's not quite the color I'm looking for, but it's interesting on putting this in a temple, right? Because then that's like a thinking spot, right? Maybe I can play with how he's thinking or what he's thinking about. So the location of where I put the pieces are important as well. But for the color, I'm specifically choosing based off the skin tone.
Okay, very good. So how do you determine, either before or after, the name of an art piece?
Good question. You know, before I used to, titles were so like not important to me. So I would just say, this is brother and sister. This is Untitled 1. This is Untitled 2. Woman and Child. Like very straightforward titles. And then I realized that titles actually have a power, right? Like you can, a lot of times when I go to art galleries and I look at a piece and I'm like, man, what is this? I'm trying to figure something out, and I look at the title, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. It kind of helps me connect what the piece is just from the words alone. So I started to be conscious about using titles. Like I started using Greek mythology for my titles. Because I mean, even when you apply to things and you put out your artwork, they're like, well, what's the title? Okay, now I gotta think about a title. You don't really want to think about a title when you're creating, but you end up having to do it. So I started to use like Greek mythology names, like that's the one with the red hair is Calypso. And then the one next to her is Gaia's Beauty, or Gaia's Mercy. Now I have another one named Gaia's Grace. And then there's another one using Artemis and Persephone. So there's different, I started to use Greek mythology names. Kind of trying to tie the image to a story in a way. So even like this guy's name is Perseverance, just because of the look that's on his face. So a lot of times, I'm finding that I have to tie in a good title with it, kind of goes with the image itself.
Very good. Now you spoke about the Black and White series, and when Black and Black series. Thank you. I noticed that some of your pieces are on colorful backgrounds, and some are on just plain white background. Is there a story behind that?
Well, like you were saying, with sometimes you choose art and you put it above because of the color, and you're like, that doesn't go with that. Like, you remember you were saying?
Yeah. The sofa and
the sofa. So sometimes I want the pieces to like, the colors. Okay, so I had a show called Pastel Expressions a couple years back. Was that last year? I had a show named Pastel Expressions last year. And I wanted like this pastel, the concept was to use oil pastels to create portraits. And so I also wanted to play on pastel to color. So a lot of the pieces that you see with color in them are from that show, Pastel Expressions. And the ones like the Classic Man, he has oil pastels in his face and then some on the outside in the background, which you usually don't see with these, as well as Tangerine. She has oil pastel tangerines around her. So those were in a certain exhibition that were themed with oil pastel and color. And then some of the other ones I had already, because if you look, majority of my work, they just don't have color in the background, right? So I kind of wanted to play with color. I was kind of going through a stage of asking people, hey, what do you think about color in the background? You know, like, what do you think if this was this? You know, kind of like this exploration of what you want to see in the work. And you really don't know until you do it. So I had a bunch of pieces that I did a colorful background in it, just to fill it out. So yeah, that's how I got what I got.
When I first met with you a couple of weeks ago in preparation for tonight, you shared a story about Tangerine. Can you share with the audience why she's named Tangerine? And why are there slices of tangerine in the
Yeah, so there was this show, this chef show, centered around food. And they're like, hey, can you make a piece that has something to do with food? And I was like, yeah, and so I created the portrait, and then for me, tangerine is a food, right? I was like, okay, let me do this tangerine. It's edible, right? So I did the tangerines in the back, and that was kind of what I titled it for, and I thought that was a good name for her as well, which was Tangerine. So that was kind of the story.
Okay, what was the response or reaction when you presented it to them?
It's good. It's good.
Well, you gave them what they asked for. You gave them what they asked for. Something with food.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right, very good. So, what is your favorite piece in the show, and why is it your favorite piece?
Okay, so after talking with my friend about the artwork, your older series it should be more valued because, it's kind of your older work, but it shows where it's come from. I really like the Black on Black series, the Black on Black piece. I have a new appreciation for it. But also it's been with me for so long, you know, it almost feels like family in a way. That family member that always comes and you're like, I don't want you here right now. I kind of treat it bad, you know, I treat it how I shouldn't, so I'm appreciating it more. But I think that the Black on Black series piece is one of my favorite. And then the second favorite will probably be out of the Heirloom series and the Kendrick Lamar that I did. Because with the Kendrick Lamar, I really wanted to focus on the background. So you can see like a lot of my pieces don't have backgrounds. And it's starting to be a problem for me because I'm like, I want to do something else back there. Just artist thinking, you know, like I want something else to be back there. And I was thinking about using Texas landscapes for the backgrounds and then having a portrait for the foreground as usual. And then I was talking to one of my friends here at the last show, and I'm like, yeah, I started to do Texas backgrounds in the back because it's more, he's like commercial. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you can say that, but it's, I was kind of thinking about like Mona Lisa, the way she has this background, this landscape of Italy, I think, in the background, and then the portrait in the foreground, so I was kind of more playing off of that. But I think that may be the newer works that I'm doing, and I'm excited about that one, but I'm also excited about the Heirloom series, which I was creating as almost a break away from doing these big collage pieces, because these big collage pieces are stressful. I'm just telling y'all, it's a lot of work that goes into it, it's a lot of precision that goes into it. And so I was making those Heirloom series as a way to decompress every day. I would take like an hour and create the heirlooms, and I did like 30 of them while I was getting ready for a show. So, you know, while I was doing that practice, because I considered it practice, just putting these pieces together, I came out with a good body of work. So that's probably I told you 3, but that's kind of like, it's the order in which it goes.
Absolutely. And you call it the Heirloom series because? Well,
the Heirloom series, that's what I initially created it for, was to have something to pass down to like generations. Mm-hmm. You know, like I wanted to make it special. I think as artists, every time we make something, we want to make it special. But I wanted to make it to where it was culturally appreciated, which kind of the imagery in there is kind of goes back to the 60s and 70s. And kind of to want to make the heirlooms, you know, special. So that's kind of what I created it for, named it that.
Very good. So you have a sculpture at the MLK Park and now a mural going up on the east side. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what's your interest in doing public art? And have you been asked to do private commission work as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so the MLK Park sculpture was with the city of San Antonio, and they kind of reached out to me to create this sculpture, which, you know, when I got the phone call, they was like, hey, Kaldric, we want you to make a sculpture, design a sculpture for us. And I'm like, I don't know if you've seen my work, but I don't make sculptures. Like, I make 2D work, you know. And they're like, no, we want you to design it. So I kind of went in and kind of worked with those guys to design the sculpture while they fabricated and installed it, which, you know, and I also have a mural coming up that's on Nolan and Cherry Street on that underpass that's centered around the Heirloom series. And public work I think is important because, you know, a lot of times, like regular people don't get to go to art shows. They don't know anything about museums, and they're so busy living life that they don't really get to stop and experience art. So with public art, like it's in their neighborhood, you know, like it's there, and they can just, on their way to work, they can pass up and appreciate art. Mm-hmm. You know, they can appreciate something that normally would have been in a gallery setting. Not only that, but public art stays for much longer than a gallery show. You know, like this will be down next month, you know, or, you know, gallery shows alternate a lot. So with public art, there's much more staying power. So yeah, I really like public art. I want to lean more into it, especially after the sculpture. So
Commission pieces, have you done any?
commission pieces. Somebody actually commissioned me to do a smaller version of the Spheres of Reflection that's at MLK Park, and it fell through. I don't remember what happened, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But that was a commission for the sculpture. But if you mean commissions like artwork commissions, I do those often.
Okay, very good. Any one particularly that you can speak to that you did as a commission piece?
Yeah. There's one commission piece here that is from Tony G's. I don't know if you guys know the restaurant, a soul food restaurant. Tony G seen me at Juneteenth, and he was like, "Hey man, I got this vision that I want you to do. I want you to paint the Lord's Supper, but with black people." And I'm like, "Okay, like I can do that." He's like, "I want this huge piece to go in my house." I'm like, "Okay." So he commissioned me to do that piece back there, the Lord's Supper, Last Supper, but with black people. So I put dreadlocks on them and kind of changed it up a little bit.
All right. I was actually at his home the other day for an event, and I got to see the original.
Oh, nice.
It's very nice. Very nice.
It's a little bigger than this one.
Yeah, in his dining room. So, do you have any thoughts on our current political climate with the pushback on cultural representation, and how might you plan to navigate that? You know, a lot of cutbacks in public funding for art and whatnot. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is a bad thing. I mean, the first place that people go to is the arts to cut spending. You know, like it's important that you have art. I don't think people realize how important it is. Like I was seeing that, you know, with the DEI exclusion and everything, they were kind of going for the African American Museum in DC, kind of trying to either defund that or take certain images, exhibitions from out of there, because, you know, it kind of centered around African American slavery, or, you know, whatever the exhibition was that they were trying to take out.
True history.
True history.
Right, right.
And the thing is like, I mean, why do you want to take it out, right? Oh, well, it makes a certain group of people feel bad.
And?
Well, I remember being in U.S. history, and I'm like, the part where slaves came up, and everybody looks at me like, I'm like, I wasn't there. I don't know. This was a long time ago. But the point was that I still had to deal with it. You know, I still had to deal with that. It's still a history. And I'm like, if it's history, leave it. You know, leave it. Let the stories be told. So, you know, it's like we're gonna have to navigate around that.
Absolutely. All right. You are a very prolific artist with huge respect and a good following here in the San Antonio community. Do you see yourself as a leader? And if so, what does being a leader in the arts mean to you?
Leader is a strong word. It's just so much responsibility that comes with leader. I'd like to be an inspiration more than anything, like to inspire other artists. But leader, I wouldn't use that word just because there's so many responsibilities that come with that. But I'd say definitely an inspiration. I'd like to, you know, show artists that, hey, we can put images of us on huge walls around the city, you know, and we can do different exhibitions in places where people like us usually weren't seen, you know. So I kind of want to be an inspiration to show other artists, you can do this, we can navigate this art thing like this, you know. So I'd say inspiration for sure.
Okay, so having been through the fire, what advice would you give an emerging artist?
Emerging artists. I'd definitely say study art. Like, so study like artists that you're inspired by. Study the route that they took. Study where they are, because a lot of times artists, we see like artists who's successful and we see where they're at now, but we don't see where they started, you know, and they started in the same place we started. So if you kind of backtrack their history, just look through their history, like go on their Googles and look at all the web searches, the news articles, all of these things, and you can kind of see kind of a blueprint for their success, which is what I do. I kind of like study an artist's inside and out, you know. So I'd recommend that, and I recommend doing exhibitions. Like one of my friends told me again, she's like, "Oh yeah, you're an exhibiting artist," and I'm like, "Oh, I am." Like I never thought about it. I never put in perspective, but then I went back throughout the years. And I'm like, man, I think I was doing like 4 exhibitions every year, which breaks down to like, you know, 1 every 3 months, which, I mean, that's pretty good, you know, given time that you have to create work and then exhibit it for a month. Yeah, I'd say exhibit, show your work is like one of the biggest things. That's what I'm best at, is like showing work. That's why I'm at where I'm at, because I'm showing my work all the time. I make sure I'm in different places, you know. So exhibiting is a big deal, I'd say.
And so on that note, what do you see as your next evolution in your work?
I'd say that I'll probably follow the Heirloom series. I'll probably start making bigger works in that style. And I'm gonna start taking my own photos for the portraits. So I've already like invited artists into my studio, or different people into my studio to snap photos of them, and then now these guys will be the subject of my work, which I have like a good amount of subjects built up already. I just gotta start on it. So that'll be my next body of work.
All right. So my last question before we open it up to the floor for those who might have questions, what would you like your legacy to be?
A legacy, I would say, is just like the artwork. So let's say like a physical legacy of the sculptures, the public art that people can go through and say, oh, this was Kaldric Dows, let me look him up. Physical legacy, having like sculptures and then my artwork in different institutions where people can see physically, but then also the digital legacy, which is like that same thing I was telling you guys, the Google pages, like, so digital legacy, where people can, young artists can look me up and go through all of my, like my files, my everything that I've done. And then just like cultural community legacy, like, you know, artist friends, like, oh yeah, I remember when Kaldric did this, or, you know, Kaldric comes through with kind of like that word of mouth, but community-based legacy, you know.
Well, thanks for addressing my questions. I'm going to open it up to the floor. I'm going to come down with the mic for anyone who has a question for our wonderful artist. Gentleman in the back, we'll start with him and work our way up to the front.
Tough questions.
Tough questions. Now, payback time. State your name, please.
Hello, yo. My name is Mav, but it's named by me. It's Kevin. And I just wanted to ask, well, first, like, I know how big we are in terms of supporting each other as artists in the artist community, with not only buyers, but people in spaces that make choices within the city, within the state, as far as funding, different things like that. What do you want to see more from them as far as helping the artist community grow? What people from outside of the artist community, what do you want to see from them?
I would say people like, you know, institutions that are like, say, commissioning artists to do, you know, work. So let's say like institutions, let's say like different institutions to reach out to artists that they see, right? And they're like, hey, we want to commission you to do these works for this certain place. That would be helpful for, you know, artists. Also, like even the city to reach out to more artists and be like, hey, we have this opportunity going on. We wanted to reach out to you and make this project happen. Yeah, I mean, just institutions kind of reaching out on a local level to the artists that they see operate, because a lot of times they'll pick artists from different cities and different states, and it's like, well, you have artists that's here, you know, so I kind of want to see them kind of reach out more locally to people the artists that's here.
About flowers to like University Hospital that does support a lot of artists in San Antonio.
Yeah.
If anyone's been into University Hospital properties, it's an art gallery throughout. It's really great for the patients too.
No, University Health does great. I haven't been to any of the other hospitals, but they have a great program that is built around art.
Right.
In a way.
not to mention the the Frost Bank building.
Good art.
Or the Robert L. Hilliard.
Yeah. Who else has a question for the artist? Yes, sir.
My name is Kevin Jones. My question is, how much art do you have around San Antonio?
Oh man, I should keep better track of what is going out and where it's at, but I can say that I've made at least 80, 90 pieces, and so everything that you see in here, that if it's not in here, is sold. So it's a good amount that's out in San Antonio. I couldn't tell you how much, but it's a good amount.
So your account, you got a good accountant in, right?
You know, I just started to find out about the whole business side of art, which is necessary. For artists, we need to find out more about the business, because they don't teach that.
I'm so proud to be able to own an original Kaldric Dows that was delivered to by the way, I'm Gloria Ray. That was delivered to my home by Kaldric Dows himself and presented to me in my garden. I collect a lot of local artists. My house is an art gallery. When people come into my house, the first thing they see and their mouths drop open is the Kaldric Dows piece that reminded me of my granddaughter. And every time I walk up my steps, I look at that pretty child and I think about you. Thank you for bringing that to me. Everybody that comes to my house and loves it.
Good. Thank you for taking it. You asked where the art goes, and this is one of the places where it goes. So thank you for
Hello, Alexander Macbeth. Take us through the process of, you have this concept in your head, you have the white canvas, you have the brush in your hand. Take us through that process of how it comes out of your head and becomes that.
Man, it's a tough process. It's a tough process to get started because you have a concept in your head, like you said, of what you want to see. But once you get started, the paint is too watered down and it's not the right consistency that you're looking for, or that eye is skewed too much. You run into all of these issues to where when you're building up layers, it's not what you want to see exactly, but this is just a second layer, right? You got 5 of them to do. So the process of just adding on until it gets to be what you want to see is that art process. That's kind of the process that's the sweet spot. And then there's something, as you know, as you're an artist, called the flow state. That you get in this flow and you start to just create. And then by the time you know it, it's 2 a.m. and you've created something, right? You've created something nice.
Who else has a question for this man? So as I'm coming up, how many hours on average does it take to create a piece like that?
About 15 hours. So I'll do maybe like 3 hours a day on the piece, and at the end of the week, I'll have a piece created.
Hi, I'm Deja Coleman. I was wondering about your process and how you transferred the collages onto the faces.
Yeah, that's the technical part. So in the beginning, it was very, starting it, when you start anything, you don't know what you're doing. So in the beginning, this was like one of the beginning ones. And I knew that I had all of these pieces of paper, these brown pieces of paper, black pieces of paper that I wanted to put on that piece, on this outline that I drew out, but I didn't know, well, how do you apply it? Well, we have glue, right? But specifically, there's this acrylic medium that I use that once it dries, is almost like plastic, right? So it's an acrylic medium that I'll use to take a piece of paper and just picture that whole thing as outlines, and I'll take say the piece right by our mouth, and I'll put it on top of the lips, and then I'll draw around the lips, and then I'll go and I'll cut it out. So I'm like flipping paper the whole time, trying to get the outline of what I see. And then I'll paste it, hoping that it's the shape that I want. So it's a lot of trial and error, because then I'll have to go and I'll cut out the space again. And then I'll go and I'll put like this brown. Oh, does this brown work next to this brown? No, let me take that one off. So it's a lot of back and forth. So the process is I'm choosing the pieces of paper, and then I'm using the acrylic medium to paste it on there, and then I'll do that process the whole way through until it comes out. And then once all of the collage is on there, then I'll go over with acrylic and I'll do the eyebrows, or I'll do the details in the nose or the mouth, and outline different things. Like under the neck, you kind of see, now that the collage is on there, I can shape the neck a little bit. Or even with his, how he has that neck, that kind of the darker part that comes down, I can go in there after I lay the collage on there and do the acrylic. So it's a process for sure.
Hey, it's Matt again. It's kind of a loaded question, but with the rise of AI, right, and the constant iterations where we don't know, like, the .0s or the .1s. Right now they're already talking about 0.5. And especially it recently passing the Turing test, which was more human-like in terms of like analytics and I think even like coding, that's like a threat. And then art, I don't know, you've probably been seeing the Studio Ghibli, people going and putting themselves, basically having that printed out and they're posting it. Same thing with, the action figures. Now, the question, as far as yourself, an artist that makes pieces with his hands, right? One, do you have any fears, any concerns with AI and us as artists? And then two, what do you tell both artists and non-artists in terms of like, I wouldn't say a war, but like basically us and continuing our path as artists, and then people who are non-artists, them supporting that? What would you, one, how you feel about it, and then two, what advice would you give?
So one, I'd say, am I worried about the AI, but specifically for my art? I think we're at a point now where somebody can go in and say, make me this portrait in Kaldric Dows style, and it'll pull up a collage piece like this, but the portrait that they chose. So it's kind of bothersome. It's kind of bothersome that artist's work can be replicated exactly the way that the artist does it. It's something that's not authentic about it. It doesn't feel like art, and hopefully there's no one trying to pass it off as their original art. But then the second question was, give me again.
What would you tell artists and non-artists about in terms of one, encouragement or advice to artists, and then as non-artists, like as far as how they use AI, and also in support of us? Because you see how strong the algorithm is,
Right.
where a lot of our art isn't being shown on social media, and it's more favoring things like more like reels, it's more favoring AI art, and a lot of our art is like theirs. So sometimes I have to like check myself where like I'll be meeting artists and like it's like, hey, nice to meet you, and then like basically be like, oh yeah, what's your Instagram? And you realize you already follow them.
Right.
And they've posted that they had an event, they posted new pieces, all of that, and it just hasn't popped up like on your feed. It's been a lot more of what's popular, like the remakes of Ghibli art, or like the whatever is hot right now, visually, that like is basically just, it's basically just poisoning the algorithm. I would say, what would you say to artists that are trying to make art, trying to have people come to the events? And what would you say to non-artists, as I would say the ones that are and aren't using AI, or don't know the pressing issue?
I guess AI is kind of based off of people's behavior, right? So I would recommend to non-artists to go and like all of the artists' artwork, like original artwork, or kind of like try to disturb that algorithm. And then to artists, I wouldn't know what to tell them, how to correct that. What can we do about AI? What can we do about AI, right? But that's a tough question. It's like, what's the future of this thing as far as our art is concerned? Like, how far can it take it? You know, can it take all my heirlooms and make one new piece and say this is a new AI created piece? You know, so I mean, it's kind of scary, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer would be. Maybe we find out.
We have one last question over here in the corner.
I'm a non-artist that I've been blessed to inherit my sister, her art gallery, and I have a gallery here. Do you come through the galleries and critique and give pointers on this and that type thing to non-artists and beginning artists? Because this is a hard fraternity to actually get into. You know, you kind of got to like feel your way. You go here, and there's not a person really in contact. I was blessed to be contacted with Barbara and connected with Ron to be blessed to come here. But just for people that's not trailblazers, that run the streets like I do, knocking on doors and making phone calls, is there a person, you know, in San Antonio, do they have a hotline that you can call if you're a new artist or something of this nature? Call this line and they'll give you directions to go somewhere, because you can go all over the place with this thing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's for one, I'm always open and I'm talkative to any artist that's trying to figure out some stuff, and I know it. I'm very open to telling artists everything, but as far as a hotline, you know, you kind of gotta figure it out. You know, you kind of gotta. But the best way of doing it is talking to other artists and say, hey, what works for you? You know, like, hey, I got
Word of
these.
mouth.
Word of mouth and talking to other artists. The best way that I've been learning is just going to different shows and talking to Barbara about different things. And older artists, like, they've already had exhibitions here where I want to be. You know, so I'm like, how did you get this show? And they'll say, you know, oh, I had to talk to so-and-so. Well, so-and-so doesn't work there anymore. And now, oh, I talked to this person in charge. So it's kind of like word of mouth and kind of figuring it out at a ground root level. But every artist I know is open to showing you what the route is they took, which may not work for you, but at least you'll know, you know, how they got there.
Sure. Thank you.
So in addition to that, if you're not a member already, San Antonio Ethnic Art Society is looking for new members. So, but also the Carver Cultural Community Center is one of the best places to go look at art on a monthly basis with the local artisans here in San Antonio. They have awesome shows, and we have the director here with us today. So definitely support the arts in San Antonio. And I will have to say, for a community that only has like 8 or 9%, is it 7%? African American. This is one of the most involved communities I think I've seen. I've lived in multiple cities all over the country, but the African American experience, if not the ethnic experience in San Antonio, is amazing in regards to their commitment to artisans in the community, at least from my perspective. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Barbara to finish us out on this awesome experience with this amazing young artist, Kaldric Dows.
Thank you all for being here. I mean, I'm really hoping that this space that one of the things that we do in this space is that we have more conversations like this. You know, a place for community. That this gallery is like a real ground roots place for community. And so I really appreciate everyone who took the time to be here tonight. Kaldric, I cannot thank you enough for being our first artist in the space. Also, Stewart, for facilitating this talk. You did awesome. It was great questions, and I really feel good. I feel like we're off to a really good start. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, for indulging us.
Can I get a picture of you and me with this and the little ball? Yeah. Thank you.
I'll be.
And then.
Now that she's local. Next is my brother.
We've been hugging on her.
Oh, good, okay. And his lovely girlfriend.
That was my collection of prints.
You want this still on or?
Probably doesn't.